go ahead and get rolling. We've got a big day today, and I've got, just to warn you, 3 or 4 pages of notes and tasks and what we're going to do. I encourage you guys to take notes as we go, and then I'll tell you, there's a couple of things that I'm going to show you as far as web soil survey and another web page. And so I have found when teaching this stuff, it's easier to just watch what I'm doing, and then we'll have time for you guys to actually practice on your own. And so when that stuff comes up, I will let you know. All right, so we're just gonna jump through Blackboard and make sure we're all on the same page. All right, so we are back here in week 5. And if you can't see it, let me know. There's a few people who are jumping on Monday morning Zoom sessions, and I'm hoping that they're working. It's kind of just a good spot to connect without a major agenda. So I'm enjoying those, and we're going to keep doing them. As far as what is due this week, you've got 2 major things. So first is the lecture quiz over ecological components and function. And then the second thing is the grazing management plan spot check. All right, and so I tried to list these out with what needs to be done. So in order to suffice this spot check requirement. So number 1, you need to share your Google document with me, and at this email address, please, kdatley@mail.csuchico.edu. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2 is to make sure that you have some verbiage for the goals section of the management plan. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about goals today. I'm actually going to shove you guys into breakout rooms and let you discuss them together. And then the third thing is to use Google Earth to add the DMU management area borders to your map on Google Earth, to save it. Either save it as an image or screenshot it and then just copy and paste it into your Google document. You don't have to have any text with it or anything right now. I just want you guys to practice using Google Earth and then getting that map into the grazing management plan. All right, so any questions on due dates for this week? Mike, go ahead.
Yes. So on when we are putting that border in on Google Earth, you want us to use that model from week 4 or 3. I can from that PDF, correct? If I was.
Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
what I played with it this morning, and then I'll tell you guys in the hopes that maybe you won't have bad luck like I did. So I was working on my borders this morning for the DMU and thought I had saved it, and then was on another Zoom session for a national forestry meeting, and somebody took over the screen. As happens with Zoom and screen share, and I lost everything. So, and you know those borders aren't straight. It's not like a dang rectangle. So I wasted some time this morning. So just remember to save and save often with those polygon things. So, but yes, does that answer your question?
Yes, and then also the videos, the how to use the Google Earth, the 1 and 2 are extremely helpful. Thank you.
They are. Yep. Good. Yeah, they were good ones. There's a lot of them out there. Those are the 2 that pertained somewhat to ag that is really going to start, or that was doing what we're going to do. So, yep. True. Cool. I hope you guys have had a chance to watch those. Any other questions on due dates this week? All right. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. For those screenshots, you want us to have one from like different times a year, correct? We want like a spring and a fall, correct? Or is it like, I can't remember.
Eventually.
Oh, so not this.
Yeah. Right now, I just want you guys to get your borders in, save them, and then just get an image into the Google document, okay?
Okay.
And so the idea here is that we're gonna start adding some stuff to that map. We're gonna add water points, recreational paths, the power lines we're going to add, all of that good stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so I just uploaded this. I don't know how many of you guys have seen the post on Facebook from Dr. Dave Daly, who is a cattleman here in Butte County. He's also the farm administrator. And he and his family, or not he specifically, but his family has been grazing the Plumas National Forest since 1852. And the bear fire took out their entire permit, and they've lost between 300 and 400 head of cows and calves. And so he kind of copes with grief through writing, and he's a really great writer and speaker and very involved in the industry in addition to being a leader here on campus. And so he wrote this post on Facebook, and it is long. I will warn you of that. So it's going to take 30 minutes to get through it. And I'm not making this a assignment or anything. It's linked to the bottom part of this week's stuff. And I put it in a Word document or in a PDF. And if you guys have a chance to go through and read it, please do. It's pretty compelling for the legacy that has been lost because of negligent policy, poorly managed forest, extensive regulation. And just keep in mind that this family has been grazing this area for 57 years before there was even a Forest Service to regulate them. And so it's just, there's a lot of hard stuff in this paper, in this PDF, and there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of hard truth, but there's also hope as well. And if you guys get squeamish with pictures of dead animals and that type of stuff, don't look at the last like 4 or 5 pages of it. The text is all in the first probably 6 or 7 pages, and the pictures that he posted alongside of it are in the last few pages. And I don't want to force you guys to look at something that you're uncomfortable with, but it's also the reality of what has happened. And so Dave really wants this story to be shared because something has got to change with the federal management of stuff, federal and state management as it pertains to wildfire. And so I was on a call the National or the Public Lands Committee meeting all morning. And he's the vice president of the Forest Service Committee. And he had some harsh things to say to government officials in the Forest Service. And it's just hard right now all the way around with the fire. And if you guys have ever been through, loss and fire, you'll probably resonate with some of the stuff he's saying. So anyway, I put this in here. There are pictures at the bottom. Some of them are not pretty. So just beware.
Where is this again, Casey?
It's in the week 5 folder at the very bottom. It's just a linked PDF. I'm curious, and you guys can use your thumbs up or whatnot, but have you guys been able to see this floating around on social media at all?
I actually read it yesterday.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I actually read it and shared it too.
Yeah, it's pretty heartbreaking.
I read it not knowing it was him writing it. Like, I read the whole thing through, then looked back and was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he does not grieve in public at all, and this was very, very surprising. So I've known Dave. Sorry, I'm probably gonna cry. So I've known Dave for 17 years. He was my advisor here at Chico State. He's been my boss. He's been my mentor, and he's one of my best friends. And so I've spent time in the mountains with him and his family, and it's really rugged. And I'll show you guys some pictures, maybe today if I can find them, of what it looked like beforehand. And it's you guys know the stats on the fire. It was moving so fast that animals couldn't even get out of the way. The furthest they could get down was down into the ravines. And it's very, very, very sad because of decades of mismanagement and overreach and everything else. And so I was looking, I know that it blew up, like it's been shared on social media a lot, which is great, because those things tend to get some attention sometimes from state and federal legislators. And I was just trying to see 25,000 shares in 36 hours, basically. So it's moving. But anyway, I just wanted to get that to you guys. So it's pretty sad. But all right. The only upside to that whole situation is I am motivated. Now I'm motivated more than ever before that this class is important, range management is important. And so you are going to get passionate Casey from here on out. Not that I haven't been passionate about other stuff, but it's just reinvigorated the importance of these range classes and getting people that want to know the land into these management positions. And so that's the new motto for the class is in order to manage the land, you've got to know the land. And that is what we are doing through this grazing management plan. We're starting with maps and borders, and then we're going to move into soils today. And then we're going to move into vegetation probably starting next week. And you got to know what's there in order to know how to manage it and how to graze it. So any quick questions or comments before we move on? Alrighty. Okay, so I have, we're gonna segue into the grazing management plan now. And we're gonna eventually get to soils, but right now I wanna talk about goals. So we very quickly mentioned goals last week to get you guys to kind of start thinking about stuff. We talked about, you know, what the agency that owns it or that doesn't own the land, that manages the land, what their priorities would be and that type of thing. So what I would like you guys to do is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms for let's go for 10 minutes. And if you guys get done, you can pop back into the main room. That is fine. So here's what I want to know, and I will put this in the chat as well. So with this Daughtry Hill unit, I want to know what you guys visualize the land being in 10 years, in 100 years, and in 1,000 years. Okay, so I want you guys to talk about things that are going to change on the landscape, things that aren't going to change on the landscape. And I want you to talk about some of the, or share those visions. And if you guys will assign a note taker and spokesperson for your room, that would be great. So that when we come back together, we can have a discussion. And so when we come back together, I'm going to ask you guys, okay, what do you guys think the land looks like in 10 years? Okay. What do you think it looks like in 100 years? And everybody, or every room rep is going to participate. Okay. So this is a good place to kind of get involved and start thinking long term. And so these eventually are going to translate into the long-term goals. And so, but first we got to start with what the land is going to look like. So let me type this into the chat. And so I just put in a couple of questions to kind of spur some thinking and some conversation. So there is the question, and I've got to assign breakout rooms. So it'll be just a minute for me to get that. Start recording again. There we go. All right, so I don't know who our spokespeople are, but if somebody would like to start, I'm curious at what you thought would be different or the same or change in the next 10 years. So 10 years.
I can start if
nobody else.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut anybody
Great.
off. So we kind of, for the next 10 years, these are kind of just like bullet points, so they're really
Yep.
not
Go for it.
sentences. But like fire could keep happening, so who knows what it's gonna look like. Like we're just gonna keep like starting over and over, it feels like.
Okay.
And then we don't think it's gonna change that much, just like the normal cycle of things, unless it just keeps burning. Maybe different wildlife circulating through, new species due to like development, which could like push them down farther into the valley. PG&E could possibly improve their power lines and the management of them.
Ooh, let's talk about that. That's a great point. How would you expect PG&E to improve their power lines?
I feel like I don't really know how they could improve them, but I feel like I don't know, maybe the way they manage them. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
really know like what to do. I don't know what power line.
Well, a lot of people, from what I've seen personally, is a lot of people they're doing one of two things. They're clearing more brush away from the power lines, and they're also taking away the old school wooden power lines and replacing them with these carbon fiber, I believe they are. These carbon fiber poles that are supposed to withstand wind, snow, cracking. It's supposed to be able to fall. 3 or 4 trees are supposed to fall on them, and they're not supposed to break and cause like a live wire situation and such like that.
Yep, absolutely. What else are, if any of you guys are from the North Bay, like Santa Rosa area, there's a lot of talk going on over there about getting rid of the power lines that are above ground and burying them. So why is that a risk though?
It's a lot harder to service them and check like at what point in the line is there a breakage or an issue.
Yep.
But it's actually super common in like other countries across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like the underground lines and they've had good luck with it, but it does take a lot more like management effort.
Yeah. When I was in, I lived 3 months in Brisbane, Australia when I was finishing up my PhD, and there were no telephone lines or power lines above the ground. It was all below. So let's keep talking about this because it's kind of fun to talk about. So we know that maintenance could be a risk, or detecting where a problem could be a risk. What else?
The initial investment of taking the labor itself to dig up that miles and miles of 6 foot by 6 foot trenches would take, time, money, and effort. It all adds up. In the long run, I guess, like was just said, there is success, there is great things, but the initial investment is great.
Yeah, it is. So let's keep going down that rabbit hole of digging things up. How does that change rangeland? Like if we looked at that Daughtry Hill unit with the PG&E line through the center of it, right? And they went through and dug it up however deep they needed to go to put underground power lines in, what would that do to the land?
It could do a number of things. It could destroy the whole topographical idea of it. It could destroy the whole environment that whole little plot of land runs around in circles and circles.
How does it destroy it? Get specific.
Well, it could start a chain reaction for instance, by clearing all that land out, you could destroy some type of small animal's home, and by them being eliminated from the equation, each other step suffers, and that goes from predators to first level consumers, second level consumers, and even down to the decomposers. Everybody in the circle is affected if one is pulled away.
Sure. Okay. So you watched the videos this week. That's good.
Yeah.
Hunter's saying that it's going to knock out whole hills. What do you mean, Hunter? For trenches, okay. Well, they're probably not even going to be able to get through some of that country, right? And put in line. So we may see power lines shift just based on accessibility. So, but if, let's say, for argument's sake, they were able to put underground power lines through the center of the DMU, what we know that it could destroy animals' homes, right? But what does it do to the soil?
Yeah, couldn't it ruin the soil biology in a sense? Or I don't really know.
That's a great guess. What do you mean by ruin the soil biology?
Well, there's like a whole bunch of like good bacteria and God, Cindy, I'm losing it, Cindy. But there's like a whole bunch of
biodiversity in the soil.
Yeah, there's so much stuff in that soil, and if you ruin one part of it, you can mess it all up. Like they have its entire own. I can't talk. Has an ecosystem pretty much below the ground, and if you mess up that, then you can mess up soil health and plant diversity and everything.
Okay, so take that plant diversity thing and take that another step further. How does that get changed if we disrupt the soil?
You can knock out.
Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I think maybe even going to like not having that grass regrowth for a while, right?
Yep.
Something along that.
Yep. So that's right. So what can we expect to come back in those disturbed areas?
Invasive plants?
Invasive species. And so which invasive plants or invasive grasses are really bad over there in that area? Do you remember from the Mediterranean climate publication?
Cheatgrass and Medusa head.
Yep, cheatgrass and Medusa head. And there would probably be star thistle there too, for sure. So cool. Okay. So thank you, Mary. Did you guys have something else that you wanted to add to your list before I go to a different group?
10 years, so that was it.
Okay, cool. All right. What about another group for 10 years?
So our group, we kind of took this idea in a little bit of a different direction. We thought of two different ideas. We talked about how in the next 10 years it can go two directions. One, it not being managed correctly and it's staying where it is right now, and what happens, like we're talking about fires and all that other things, and droughts and such, or going through the grazing management style to where we can see where, if done correctly, we can see more of the native grasses coming back and more of organic matter buildup, plus your from fecal matter buildup, plus also urination and stuff like that. Urea is great for plants, and we can also see the more even grasses because of the seeds being spread out because of the grazing and such like that. And then I think I'm gonna pass it on to my other group mate. Oh, is she paying attention? Oh. I guess she doesn't. Okay. I guess she doesn't want to talk. Okay. So we also talked about so what can change. We talked much like in the other group. Levels of organic matter. Fires can really impact this area. Such like that. I'm sorry, I have a train going back behind me. And now what can change? We were talking a lot about. You had popped in and helped us with this one. We had talked a lot about. The type of animals that live there aren't going to change, just how they live. And we also talked about what can't. That's what. Yeah. We had a few more, but I lost them. They were supposed to chime in, but no one else chimed in.
Okay. The organic matter thing is interesting. Can we really change organic matter, you think, on rangeland soils?
Well, it's not change. I apologize. It's more of add. It's more of to help build. I guess help build it more because of it, because of the poop and whatever, even with the grasses dying and coming back, that still help builds organic matter. So if we can help control that, does it? That's what I've personally seen that happen. Or not happen, but I have seen benefits from grazing animals because of their poop.
Okay, so let's think through that just a little bit. So we're dealing with what, 3,800 acres? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so and we're in annual grass rangelands, so stocking rate's not going to be very high. So within 10 years, do we really have the ability to increase organic matter with the current stocking rates that are going to be set in that area?
I mean, not in like significant levels, but I mean to a some degree, yes.
Okay. One good way to kind of think through this
Mhm.
is that we have the ability to change organic matter content of the soil in a concentrated, heavily grazed for short duration system, which it
Okay.
doesn't typically happen on Western rangelands. Now in the Midwest, they can absolutely do it. They can stock like 2 head per acre. But
Oh, wow.
out here, it takes 20 to 25 acres to support 1 cow.
And that's
Okay.
because of the lack of quality forage. Correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So, like in an irrigated pasture situation, absolutely we could change organic matter. But on rangeland, it's going to be extremely hard to do that. So,
Because they're so spread out in such a large area.
yep. And we've got topography issues, whereas irrigated pasture usually doesn't
Right.
have that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So anyway, those are good thoughts. I'm glad you guys are thinking about this. I have found that it's kind of cool to chase these rabbit trails while we're talking about them fresh. So I'm hoping that this is making you think just a little bit. So, okay, cool. Next group.
I can go for group 4.
Okay.
So for our 10-year, we said that ideally nothing would change very drastically. We expect the same vegetation, topography, and wildlife.
Okay.
And on like the organic material, we said that on the 100 years and 1,000 years, like increasing the, amount of, whether it be like manure or the like grass turnover going into the soil, and hopefully increasing the quality of that. And we said that ideally with good practices in management, we would see little to no change or only an increase in quality of the land. However, we understand that that's not necessarily realistic over 1,000-year period.
Okay, cool. All right, and then 4th group. Who was the spokesperson for the 4th group?
We're not the 4th group, for the 2nd group. I can go.
Okay, whichever
So-
group hasn't gone yet, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Group 2. So basically we said like for 10 years, realistically, not a whole lot's going to change. I mean, there might be some alteration in vegetation and stuff, and like there could be fire or whatnot, but for the most part, going to stay relatively the same. But once you get into the 100 to 1,000 year range, we're seeing probably there's going to be a lot of urbanization with population increase, and there's a possibility the land could be sold to private and be built on.
Okay.
Or also like climate change could be a thing. Like our summers could become longer and drier, becoming more it could turn into more of like a deserty type climate instead of trees and grassland. And
Yeah.
then we said like also like that size of that land could be decreased too, also from urbanization. But realistically, we don't really know what's going to happen in 1,000 years. It could completely change. It could become a desert. It could become like a swampy looking place. Like we don't know. But I think
we'd go
climate
to desert
kind of
before
plays a
swamp.
factor if that changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the change in environment or rangeland type is an interesting one, because we've seen it happen before, right? So like Mesopotamy, which is now modern day Israel and Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Iran. I mean, that used to be a mecca, like literally and figuratively, but it used to be really, really fertile grounds. And Israel still has a little bit of that today, but a lot of that landscape has turned arid. So, and it's not just because of farming and land use and that type of thing. It's because we've seen the climate change as well. So, okay, cool.
And also we kind of pointed out was, I was gonna say, because that plot of land's right below that lake. So depending on how that lake kind of fares out, whether it dries up or whatnot, that could also play a factor in water there.
Yep. Or
Okay,
if the dam busts, right? That could really change the landscape big time.
Yeah, exactly.
Big time. Hopefully it's engineered to not do that. So, okay, cool. So those are great 100,000 year thoughts too. So let me go back to Mary, Mike, and Miranda. And Mary, if you want to go first, what was some of your 100-year changes that you think, or changes or things that are going to stay the same?
We didn't like come up with a lot, but we said like maybe everything would die. Like, who knows?
Apocalypse. Okay.
We definitely think land management can be improved, but like could also be within the next 10 years. And then we thought, like, what about like erosion of the land because of the river? Like, what if something happened? And like possible landslides.
Yeah.
But and then 1,000 years, we just put deforestation ? So
okay, deforestation could totally work. Just keep in mind though, not officially a forest, right? It's an oak woodland, but there definitely could be harvesting of oaks for 1,000 different reasons. So you could see those especially the foothills on that property actually just be grasslands and not native oak lands. So we've seen that happen a couple different spots in that area, and it isn't the greatest for grass regrowth. Like you'll get, so just to give you an example, my uncle outside of Reading, he has a ranch that's about 2,000 acres in size, and it was really densely populated with oaks. And so the thought process was that over a 10-year period, they would go in and thin out the oaks. And this happened in the late 90s and early 2000s. And the people that did the wood cutting took way more than I think they should have. And so what ended up happening is he had, for the first like 5, maybe 6 years, he had a really large increase in vegetation production because it opened up the canopy, more UV light, that type of thing. But after that, the vegetation production went way down because the grasses depend on the foliage from the oak trees falling every year and providing insulation on the crust of the soil surface to preserve water holding capacity, to preserve nutrients, to add nutrients back to the soil, etc. So it messed up that nutrient cycle portion. So yeah, they're now going back in and replanting oaks. So which is a crazy thought that we can mess stuff up so bad and then have to try to fix it. And we can hashtag federal government all over that because it happens not just with oaks. So federal and state government really. But anyway, okay, cool. So Mike, did you guys have any additional comments to 100 years or 1,000 years?
We also talked. We talked a lot about if the annual precipitation stays the same in the next 10 years, and as long as there's no large natural disasters or some type of something that can change how the cycle works. Because as long as that cycle continues, it will continue forever.
Okay.
Unless a outside force acts upon it.
Yep. Okay, cool. Miranda, what about you? You kind of talked a little bit about 100 years and 1,000 years. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, one of my group members actually brought up an interesting theory that I hadn't heard anymore, but with rising temperatures, the possibility of our tree line actually like decreasing or going like further down the valley. So in like 1,000 years, that might not be an oak woodland. It might be just, you know, grass area, or it might turn, like other groups kind of said, more deserty. And we also talked about the river changing and the possibility of what's going to happen to the lake. So our water sources changing the land also.
Okay, cool. So you guys talked a lot about, you know, things that could change. Just really quickly, what are at the 1,000-year mark? What are some things that would probably stay the same?
I don't know. I think we got a little like unpositive, whatever that word is. I just forgot it. Yeah. For 1,000 years of like it might not even exist, and so we didn't really talk a lot about what would stay the same, but most likely it's probably going to stay kind of foothillsy like, but a lot of like the elements of that topography are going to change.
Yeah. Yep. And I would agree. I think the topography is going to be there. The property lines may change. The fire cycle is going to be there as long as we're a Mediterranean climate. You know, and unless we fall off into the ocean, which is a possibility, like I don't see a lot of like the geographical stuff changing, especially the soil types and stuff. And so that's why we are headed into talking about soils, is because on rangeland, they're pretty stable. And they're stable from the standpoint of, as long as we manage correctly and we don't stress the soil so that it has to change to compensate. We're also not in a heavy production system like agricultural soils, that you just don't see the huge variation in changing soils. And now we've got a lot of different programs in place to conserve soils. So, okay, cool. That was a great discussion. You guys came up with some excellent stuff. And so what I would suggest is, is thinking through some of this stuff for your long-term goals, right? And so if you had to write out a long-term goal paragraph in, 4 to 6 sentences, what would it say? Okay. And so that's something that you can kind of target for your grazing management plan is, what are the long-term goals of CDFW in the management of that property? Okay. So we know that they deal with fish and wildlife, right? So that probably needs to be a part of that solution. And in order to sustain wildlife, you've got to have vegetation production and cover and predation cover and, all of those type of things. And so that leads us into talking about short-term goals. So what are things that need to happen in the short term? And so here we're going to talk about just really within the next 10 years. So what are some short-term goals that are going to help reach the long-term goals? All right, so we're going to go back out into breakout rooms. I'm going to give you 12 minutes in this breakout room, because this is where you guys can start getting into some management stuff and some prediction and what you think should be done. And so I'm going to go ahead and just kick you back to your normal rooms. And Cody, I'll get you added to a breakout room as well. And let me type this into the chat so we know where we're at.
Going in its natural progression like it should. And in 10 years, we can see much of that natural progression still going, and the benefits from it. So that's, much more, the oaks can grow much more. Same with, especially the oak shrubs can grow larger and such.
Okay, great. Miranda?
Yeah. So we talked a lot about brush management to make a reduction in fuel load. We also talked about not depleting the annual grasslands due to overgrazing. And we also talked on that line about NRCS, which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and how they actually like seed the area and then mix in with grazing to get the right timing, and that has taken out things like star thistle in some areas. And then we also talked a lot about water quality testing, A, for the source, and also B, for runoff or any like bank restoration, securing leasing agreements so we have a source of funding and a source of grazing, monitoring the recreational use, and maybe even providing garbage cans to limit the trash, and then also just watching the oaks for things like beetles, mistletoe, and fire.
Okay. Cool. Taylor, did you want to go?
We kind of hit on a lot of the same stuff that people have already talked about,
Okay.
but we were saying like maybe for like more of a longer term theme, like prescribed burns could be useful to help clear out dead like trees or whatnot, to kind of help with kind of giving space for grasses to grow back on.
Okay.
Kind of a different one too.
Cool. All
And
right.
also we talked about putting cattle and stuff on the land, but
Okay, that's a great segue. So, what the thing that I heard every group say is that grazing has to be a part of the solution. Okay, so that's good because we're in a livestock grazing ecology class. Okay, and we've picked a management area that is wanting grazing to take place. So it's good that grazing was part of the short-term goals. And so I think the other stuff that you guys are talking about are exactly what we need to keep in mind. So I would say that probably the combination of using grazing and fire prevention methods to support and carry out the long-term plans are really going to be the biggest things to manage for. And so we're going to support the ecological components on this place using various management techniques, and grazing is going to be one of those. And so hopefully you guys were able to kind of take some notes on what everybody shared. And same thing with the short-term goals. And here I wouldn't hesitate to go to 1 to 2 paragraphs if you wanted, okay, describing how short-term goals are going to be carried out. And so I'm hoping with this discussion that you guys now have enough stuff written down that you can kind of think through what those goals are going to be for the grazing management plan if you hadn't done so already. So hopefully this helped with that process. Okay, everybody good on goals? Does anybody have any questions about additional goals?
I do.
Yeah.
So when it comes to writing it in our plan,
Yeah.
should we have more than one long-term goal or more than one short-term goal, or should we just have make it just a set of one short-term goal and one long-term goal?
So with I think you need a variety of goals. So for long-term goals, the thing that is sticking out to me is that grazing needs to be used as a management tool to support ecology for wildlife species, right? So this is CDFW ground. So they're going to manage for wildlife. And we know that there are lots of grazing ruminants in that area. And so using domestic grazers like cattle or sheep needs to be a part of that process for long-term goals. Short-term goals could be things like seasonal grazing, right? So grazing is going to happen every year, right, at the same time. It could be the fire break stuff you guys were talking about, thinning brush. It could be intensive grazing in areas that are super brushy. So I think those type of things that you guys have talked about with short-term goals, definitely need to be considered. And so this leads to a good discussion because if you only have one short-term or one long-term goal, that leads to the creation of blanket policies. And so we're dealing with that right now in the Agri 490 class because we're using a research project that I have about how annual grasses regrow after the event of a fire. And the whole reason that we have to do this project is because there's a blanket policy at the federal level, both Forest Service, BLM, and national parks abide by it, that if fire happens on a piece of permitted ground or allotted ground for grazing, you can't go back to it until 2 years later. And the problem with that is in California annual grasslands, all that does is let the annual grasses get a year growth ahead of the cows or ahead of the grazers. So you're reinstating fuel load again, if that makes sense. And so those blanket policies are really, really prohibitive from a management standpoint. So, all right. Hunter, I don't believe so. So Hunter's asking in the chat, is there already a maintained fire break in the problem areas at least? And I didn't see one. So when I looked at the satellite image and when I was out there last spring, I didn't see one at all. So I don't, and the reason for that is the fire break that I'm thinking is most common that you might be thinking of, Hunter, is just a cat trail, right? Where you take a piece of heavy equipment like a Caterpillar, like a D7 or a D8, and you just put the blade down and you go and you expose dirt and soil. And that has a whole nother set of connotations to it, but it is an easy fire break to get an 8-foot break in there around a piece of property. And I am pretty sure that the state agencies wouldn't allow that to happen. So we see that happen more on private rangeland. All right. Cool. So you guys give me a thumbs up if you're good with goals. Like you've got a direction, you can figure this out. Fantastic. Okay. Lots of thumbs up. All right, so just to reiterate, on Friday, in addition to the lecture quiz over the ecological components and functions, also due is the Google Doc spot check, right? Where you're gonna share your Google Doc with me. You are gonna have some goals written in there, and you are gonna have a map, a Google map with the border of the property in there as an image, okay? So give me a thumbs up if you're good with what is due on Friday. Okay, fantastic. So to this point, you guys should have everything you need to get that stuff done on Friday. Okay, we are gonna start, we're gonna take a short break and we're gonna come back at 3:50 and we are gonna start looking at soil stuff, okay? All right, cool. So I'm going to turn some tunes on. I'm going to pause recording. And so I put the links to the 2 tools. They're the first 2 links in the chat. And then the third link is actually for a reference for ecological site descriptions, which I will show you in a few minutes. All right, so before we get going, I want to know what you have retained from the soils lectures last week. And so I'm just going to give you like 1.5 minutes to do to do this poll. And we will, hopefully it's launching. There we go. And then we'll talk about it. All right, so mineral is the answer here. So the majority of you guys got that correct. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to the lecture from last week, just the slides. And so here gives you just a rough breakdown of the soil component. So mineral, again, is going to be the largest percentage of that. Water is going to be a pretty big percentage as well. There's a lot of water holding capacity in soil. Air is a big part of that because the particles of soil don't lay flat against one another. They're kind of shifted around, so that allows quite a bit of air to be a component of that. And the smallest component is then going to be organic matter. All right, so you guys did good there. I got one more for you. All right, so what soil characteristic indicates soil fertility? All right, give you 5 more seconds. All right, so we'll end polling. And yes, the majority of you guys got mineral status. So let me just show you what we're talking about in the lecture. So soil fertility really has to do with the status of mineral associated with the soil component. And so it's the second most important factor controlling plant productivity. And so the most limiting elements on rangelands, and really in most agricultural lands in general, is nitrogen, that's the biggest, phosphorus, and potassium. And so those of you guys that dabble in gardening, you may use Miracle-Gro or some other fertilizer, and it always has an NPK value on it, and that's what it refers to: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. All right. I didn't actually share that with you, but that's okay. I just talked about it. We're good. All right, so that's the end of polling. And so where we're headed right now is to the first tool that I'm going to talk to you guys about. So it is Web Soil Survey, and it's actually maintained by NRCS. And so it is the first link over here in the chat. And what I'm going to encourage you guys to do is to just kind of sit back and walk with me through it, okay? I'm going to share my screen with you. I'll talk a little bit about the elements, and then as time permits, we'll give you a few minutes to kind of play with it a little bit. And then we'll talk about the edit site as well. And so if you guys have questions as we go through this, please feel free to shout them out, because it's hard to watch the chat when I'm sharing the screen. All right, so Web Soil Survey's homepage looks like this, and it's actually really easy to find. You can just type it into a Google search and it comes right up. And so it's housed within the NRCS, which is an agency underneath the guidance of the USDA. And the NRCS has changed names a couple of times. It was originally called the Soil Conservation Service. And this agency really actually was developed in 1934, 1935, in the middle of the Dust Bowl. And so this agency has been around for a long, long time. They've got lots of historical data as well. And so they created this database for land managers to use, and well, anybody to use, that is really, really prolific in the amount of data that it holds. So in order to start this process, you just click the big green button. Okay, and I have been on here all day because I'm on here a lot. And so it brings up a really kind of fresh map that's got the major highways associated with it. And so these soil records are going to be maintained for the U.S. They currently don't have any databases associated with international or on an international basis right now. There are some other ones out there. They're just not that great. So the way that you can begin to figure out the soil type for the Daughtry Hill Management Unit is using just the address. And so I did find the address the other day, so let me type it into the chat. Maybe. This is the address of the parking lot. All right, so I'm gonna reshare. All right, so if we plug that address into the address bar here, hopefully it recognizes it and it will come up. And so you can see it actually landed us right here in the center in the parking lot. And so if you guys have been playing around with the borders, this road here is going to be the westernmost borders. And so this is a really close view. I'm sure there's another way to think about that. And so this property is really big. So one of the ways that I was playing with it this morning is to just back out the scale. So up here at the top is the scale. And so we're going to start with this to kind of get our bearings. The lake and the dam are going to be our best indicators. And I think let's try it at 1 to 20. There we go. All right. And if we want to move the map around like we do with Google Earth, up here at the top is a little hand icon. If you click that, then you can grab onto the map and move it around. And so since most of the property is below Collins Lake, I'm just going to move it so that I can still see the parking lot area and the lake. And I think we can get most of the property in that. We might be able to go down to 1 to 15,000. I don't know. Let me just play with this for a second, guys. I apologize if it's making you sick. There we go. Oh, there we go. I think we can get it all there. I think. We might have part of it cut off down here at the bottom, but it's just going to be a little bit. So we're going to stay at this scale of 1 to 15,800 feet. And so that's just an indicator of the satellite parameters or whatever. So, all right. And it's important here to make sure that you just keep using your landmarks. So again, the lake and the dam are the biggest landmarks, and I always go back to the parking lot because that gives us a western and a northern boundary. All right, so with Web Soil Survey, you have a lot of different options here. And so I just kind of want to go through and point out what is going on. And so I'm going to annotate as I go, hopefully. All right, so you already know about the address area, okay? And so this is actually really nice because if you have the address, which most of us do, that for any other place, it is a good place to at least start. And then you can kind of focus in or back out depending on how big the acreage is that you're interested in. And so the next thing that I want to show you is these tabs up here. Oh, I can't work my mouse. You kind of get the point. These tabs, they are not highlighted at the moment, so they don't have any active information in them. And they won't until we identify an area of interest. And so we've got two ways or two icons that we can use to do that. And we'll get to that portion in just a second. But once you designate an area of interest, then these tabs show will become bolded, and they contain different pieces of information about that area of interest. All right, if you need to zoom in or zoom out, you can use both of these icons over here. It wasn't really working for me on my laptop this morning, so I'm hoping that it will work today. It could be just a Mac issue. Again, this little hand thing helps you to grab onto the map and move it around as needed. And then we've got a couple of other icons that I think this one is a link to information that is already published about a specific area online. And then we've got some information that can come up as well. One of the cool things that we're going to be able to potentially use here, in addition to, we can also use it in Google Earth, is the ruler to figure out things like how many square feet of fence are around this property and how many miles of fence, and or how long is the PG&E path through the middle of the property, that type of thing. All right, so let me clear all the drawings and get out of annotate. Okay, and so now we're going to talk a little bit about these menu items over here on the left-hand side. And so address is a really quick way to do navigation. And so you have several pop-up menus underneath the address. And so the first one that we'll look at here is if you didn't have a specific address for an area of interest, you could actually just go into the state and even the county if you wanted to get closer to the area that you're interested in. If you, once you have a site selected, you can also, or sorry, before you have a site selected, you can also navigate by soil type. So if you know the soil type that you're interested in and you know about where it's located, there is a really quick and easy way to get some quick information about it. And it's through this soil survey area here. And again, you can just add the state and the county, and all of the soil types within that county will pop up. So for example, if I do, oh, you know what? It's probably going to kick me out. It's going to shift the image here. So we'll play with this later because I don't want to lose the image. It took me too long to get here. All right, so let's talk really quickly about the different agencies that have information associated with this. So if you are interested in the township or the range issues, you can actually, or parcel numbers, you can use the PLSS portion here to identify an area of land. If you are on like a BLM grazing allotment in a certain state and within a field office, it will take you to that field office agency area. So we'll have to come back and play with it, but the Applegate field office in Modoc is one that I have spent a little bit of time on with Web Soil Survey, just because we've got a good alumni up there that's in that field office. If you're interested about where Area 51 is, you can come play with this later. So it's the, you just have to know what service branch you're dealing with, whether it's like an Army base, an Air Force base, etc., and then the installation. And you could actually come and look at the soil types underneath that are within that Department of Defense. And so quick, fun thing is, so I worked on a little bit of rangeland in New Mexico in grad school on the other side of the Oregon mountains in Las Cruces, and that's where White Sands Missile Range is. And they used to have grazing permits on that area, but they started, the permittees actually gave it up because they started using or losing cows to unexploded ordnance. So the missile base would actually test rockets and missiles and that type of thing, and sometimes they just wouldn't go off. Well, also sometimes when, you know, a month or however long afterwards a cow came up and started itching on unexploded ordnance, sometimes the cow would die as well. So because they would eventually go off. So we actually worked on that permit a little bit and got to talk with that former permittee. But I would say maybe use caution if you're going to go after a permit on a naval or Army base. If you're interested in forested land, like with a Forest Service permit, you could come in and identify areas here. You can do it with National Park Service as well. So if you're interested in like what type of soils are around Yosemite, this is a good place to come and do it as well. And then hydrologic unit as well. And so I haven't dealt with that one too much, but might be fun. All right, so that's kind of an intro to Web Soil Survey. Let's get to where we're headed at. And so the next thing we're gonna do is to choose an area of interest. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. So I was messing around with this today because I haven't dealt with the polygon very much, but remember these two icons here are how you identify an area of interest. Or you could actually pull in an area of interest from a shape file. And those shape files are really good, like files that are exported from programs like ArcGIS. And I think Onyx actually has the shape files associated with it as well. And so I'm not super savvy on the GPS technology side, so I'm just going to go old school with you guys. All right, so one way that you can do this is to actually build a polygon area. And very similar to a Google Earth. And so it just takes a while to build in those fences and stuff. So once you choose the icon here, you can go in and put specific fence lines in all the way around the unit. For time's sake today, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to choose just the rectangle. And I'm going to choose an area pretty much that will encompass the whole management unit, but also might encompass some outside land, outside the borders as well. And I just want to do this to, in the interest of time. So I'm going to go below Collins Lake and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom down here and then across. And I've got to look at how far across to go. Okay. And so once you let go of the mouse, it creates the AOI and it actually will pull up. And so it will bring about this blue grid shape file. And so this designates your area of interest. And you can still see I have the original address over here at the parking lot. And so I'm going to move this down just a little bit so we can get a better idea. So now that we have an area of interest designated, we've got lots of options. So the first thing that we can do is, now that we've got the area of interest designated, we can go back up to these tabs that I talked about a little bit earlier, and they are bolded. And so if we wanted to look at the soil map for this area of interest, all you need to do is click on the tab and the map will load. And as the map loads, the blue border area is the borders of your area of interest. The, I guess that is more true blue. So turquoise areas are the border. The true blue areas here are waterways, so arroyos, rivers, creeks, streams, etc. And then the orange areas, the orange lines here are the borders of the different soil types. And so the soil types here are numbered. So you can see here through the middle of this area that is all on foothill area, this is all soil type 240. And so let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Nope, damn it. Okay, it's not gonna do it, I'm sorry. I don't wanna crash this. There we go, okay. All right, so I can't make it too much bigger, I'm sorry. But this area right here in the center is soil type 240. And so if we go over here to the left, what you can see is the map unit legend. And so there's going to be various pieces of information associated with this map unit legend. First of all, the first column is going to be the map unit symbol. So the map number that is over here on the map. Next column is the map unit name. So every soil symbol has a name. Area, or the third column, is going to be the number of acres in the area of interest, so around the turquoise border here, that specific soil type is listed under. So for example, if we look at 113, there are 27.6 acres in the area of interest that map to the subordinate Auburn complex. Okay, and that is a total of 0.6% of the total area of interest. And so if we're interested in area 240 here, because that's the biggest portion of our area of interest, we can roll down to the bottom here and we can see that area 240 is the subordinate Timbuktu complex, okay, and it has slopes of 15 to 30%. So if you guys will recall back, or maybe you have it up in front of you, to the grazing management plan assignment, there was a description of the soil part. And one of those descriptions was making sure that you include the slope as part of the description process. And so that is where this is coming from. The slope is coming from the soil type here. And so you can see that the third column is the number of acres that are within that soil type within the area of interest. And so within this area of interest, there are 1,773 and a half acres that map to the subordinate Timbuktu or soil type 240. Okay, so if we look at, let me get out of annotate really quickly. If we look at, oh, and I have to clear annotate, damn it. Clear all drawings, there we go. So if we look at the percentages of the area of interest here, you can see that another big one that is soil type 114, okay? But the biggest one, the biggest percentage of soil types in this area is going to be that 240 or that subordinate Timbuktu. And there's also going to be a lot in 241 as well. And so that is really important information. And that's why they include these percentages here, because we've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 different soil types just in this area of interest. So talk to me, guys. Can you manage grazing within each one of those soil types?
I think you could, but I think you would have to either fence it off or somehow or another keep them in that certain soil type.
Yes, and so those two reasons that you said at the end of it makes it actually impossible to manage for specific soils or for a specific soil type, right? So because there's no way that we can go in and put fencing around all of the orange lines on this map, right?
Very true, yes.
Yeah, so how do we go about managing this? What do we do?
I mean, with livestock, goats get around pretty well, so
Okay.
they eat pretty much everything. I don't know.
Okay, so you're thinking solutions, so I should have been more specific in my question. That's my fault. And it's good to think of solutions. We just got to backtrack a little bit. So if we know the problem is that we cannot dictate grazing to each individual soil type here, how do we as managers or as consultants making a recommendation to CDFA suggest that they manage it for soil so that we don't degrade soil?
The type of vegetation growing in each of those soil types is going to be an indicator of that soil type.
Okay.
So in that big center section where there's that one soil type, you're going to see a certain type of vegetation versus the other parts of this property. So
yep,
that gives you at least a clue as to what's there under the ground, and then what types of vegetation grow there, and hence like what the livestock are going to want to graze on.
Exactly. So we are going to offer suggestions to CDFW for the largest proportion of soil type in the area of interest, right? So on the Daughtry property, which is the area of interest, the greatest percentage of soil is going to probably be in this 240 range and the 241 range, right? So we're going to have to graze for that, and everything else is going to have to fall where it falls, okay? So we can only graze to and prescribe grazing for the largest percentage of soil type in an area. So just some things to think about, okay? So that's kind of long term. What you guys need to do to make sure that you have a good understanding of soil in the grazing management plan is you need to select your area of interest and play with the borders and see if you can get more specific. And if not, if you do something like this, where you capture most of the property just in one rectangle area of interest, I'm fine with that. Okay. But what you need to do is you need to make sure that you list out the different types of soils and the soil numbers and the acres in the area of interest and the percentage of the area of interest in your grazing management plan. Okay, because all of this is going to really help us move forward when we create stocking rates and all of that good stuff. So you are going to need information off of this soil map tab that is contained in this table. All right, so the next tab that we're going to talk about is the Soil Data Explorer. And so if you click on that, your area of interest should remain the same. It takes just a couple of seconds to load. And so here is some really valuable information. So as you can see, the borders of the area of interest stayed the same. The soil type borders stayed the same and the waterways stayed the same. What changed is this, the menu items over here to the left-hand side. And so you can play with these, kind of go through them and play with them. So there's lots of different people that use this web soil survey database. So construction management folks, when they're bidding a job and they're trying to figure out how much equipment it's going to take to like dig out a foundation because of the different soil types, they'll actually go in and use web soil survey to figure out what soil is there. And so we see lots of people using this database. The two choices that we're going to use here underneath the Soil Data Explorer are going to be, where's the other one? Where's the risk? And we're going to come back and use this for invasive species later. I'm just trying to figure. Where was I at? Come on, Casey. All right, well, soil health. Soil health is where I was at. So one thing that we do need to take into consideration is the susceptibility of this area of interest in this management unit for compaction. So why do we need to concern ourselves with compaction? What do you think?
Not as much vegetation grows there.
So Kylie, go ahead.
Not as much vegetation is going to grow on compacted soil, and you're also going to have a lot of runoff on those areas because the rainfall isn't able to infiltrate into the soil to fertilize it or whatever.
Yep, those are definitely the results of severe compaction. Okay, who else was talking? I didn't see a name pop up.
It was me. You lose like grazing potential when you compact the soil too much.
Yep. And so because grazing is part of our short-term goals for managing this land, we have to look at compaction potential. Okay, so the way to do that is to, underneath the soil health tab, is to go into the soil susceptibility to compaction, and it'll pop down with all of this type of stuff, which you can check or uncheck depending on how you like to view it. The first thing that I would check out is the description. So what will pop up, and I know you guys probably can't read this, is just a description of soil susceptibility to compaction. So it's like a really big in-depth definition, and it also defines the ratings. Okay, and so I snuck a peek at this earlier. So let's just read through medium really quickly, because that's what this area is most likely going to be. And so a medium risk to compaction is the land has the potential for significant compaction. The growth rate of seedlings may be reduced following compaction. After the initial compaction or the first equipment pass, the soil is able to support standard equipment with minimal increases in soil density. So the soil is pretty fragile the first time it's susceptible to compaction, and then it gets a little bit more dense. So, all right, and so we can click out of the description here, and then we can go and view the rating, which is the button right next to view description. So once we view the rating, we can see that it highlighted our area of interest in yellow, and it's all one color, so that's good, meaning that it's all at the same risk level. And this will actually break down by soil map unit. And so this first table here gives you the rating for soil compaction of each soil type. And so we've got medium, 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 all the way down. There is one area, which is 195, which has a high compaction rate. So let's roll back up here and see if we can find 195. My guess is that it's not a big part of the area. Okay, these numbers are really, really small. I can't, oh, 195 up here. Sorry. So let's do a red. This area right here. All right, so first of all, do we even really need to worry about it? What do you think? Do we need to worry about it?
Not necessarily in the grand scheme.
Yeah, unless there is a gate out here and some really good vegetation on this side, the cows really don't ever make it to the corners of places, okay? And I don't know if this is truly and technically in the fence line or not, because I just selected that general AOI. But this would be an area where compaction is a big issue, meaning that there is a different soil type there. And so if we go back down here to this is a mildred cobby loam with pretty steep slopes, 15 to 30% slopes. And so it's only 0.1% of the total allotment. And so you get into very little organic matter content and a lot of rock fragments and really kind of heavy soil texture. So this is just one way to use this information. If you scroll down below the table, it will actually give you a rating for the area of interest as a whole. And so you've got this, the summary value here. And so we have more medium, or we've got 48 100 acres, so 99.9% of the allotment that is at a medium level for susception to compaction. All right, so compaction is really important here. We're going to go ahead and pop up out of that. The one thing that we are going to use heavily in this class is vegetative productivity. And so it has several different choices underneath it. You can use this for agriculture, land, or whatever. What we're going to look at is, and what you guys need to make sure that you include in your grazing management plan is range production in a favorable year, in a normal year, and in an unfavorable year. It's important that CDFW has a full contingency plan for management because we don't know what the future holds, right? So if we look at just a normal year as an example here, again, we can view the description, which will pop up here in the center of the screen. You guys can read through that. And then we can view the rating. And so underneath that, the rating is really going to be connected back to the soil map unit numbers. Okay, and that'll give you the areas in that area. And then you have a description down here. And so the description will help you keep in mind how much vegetation is actually going to be produced. What we're going to use now and in the future when we do stocking rates is this rating area for pounds per acre per year. So one of the easiest ways to kind of think about this is if we look at the percentage of soil that is in that area of interest, we can probably just take the average pounds per acre per year between these two, which is 1150, so the math isn't even hard here, and that is going to be our vegetation that is we're going to use for stocking rate calculations. Okay, so but keep in mind this is in a normal year. We also need you to look at these for a favorable and an unfavorable year. Okay, so how do you guys feel about Web Soil Survey?
It's cool.
It's cool. It's freaking badass. Like, it is such a cool piece of technology that the government developed. I'm just baffled, right? So, yeah, so Web Soil Survey is going to be a really, really good resource. We're going to use it multiple times throughout the semester. So please spend some time getting used to it. And I think next week, we're going to probably head into vegetation. But I don't know that for sure. I haven't thought ahead to next week in all honesty. So just trying to survive today at the moment. Okay. The other piece of, really quickly, and I'm sorry to keep you guys so long. The other piece of information that is included in that soil line item on your grazing management plan assignment is ecological site descriptions. And so we talked about what ESDs were in the first and the second lecture, I think. So you may, if that's not ringing a bell right now, I would go back and spend some time in that. But basically it is the description of a certain ecological site. So it's going to take into consideration soil, vegetation production, risk for fire, all of that good stuff. And so that is really important to CDFW in your grazing management plan because the ecological site stuff is going to help us better prepare for making grazing plans. And so I put that link in the chat as well. It's to the edit website. So I'm just going to change gears here. And did I pull this up? So here's the home page for the edit site. It is through the NRCS as well, but it's actually housed with New Mexico State. And it's better that it's done that way. They run technology better than federal agencies do. So the way that you can work through this to get to your information is to, you could read through the overview if you want. I suggest going through and reading the next steps. And then you can really get to the map units for the ESDs a couple of ways. You could, if you had the list number, you could actually search the list number. You could search by state, etc. I think the map is as easy as anything because we can actually, you guys are getting good at seeing maps. You can like start selecting an area of interest, okay, and just start, you know, getting getting closer and closer to where this is at. And again, our big landmark is Collins Lake, and so I already actually found it, so I'm going to go here just for time's sake. So here is Collins Lake. If we back out of this a little bit, you can see that this image gets really big really quickly. But if we go into a little closer from a map view, you can see some of our normal landscapes that we're talking about. So here's Daughtry Hill, and FYI, Daughtry Hill is the biggest portion of that soil type, and these numbers here are associated with that soil type as well. And so as far as the, let me look. The parking lot is going to be right here. Okay, so that is, and when you click on these areas, it brings up the ecological site. So if we wanted to look at the ecological site in the center of that soil type, this is the classification. And so you can add this to your briefcase, and then you can actually have it exported later. Okay, and so these ESDs become really important for the different soil types that are associated with it. And so one way that I just have been kind of quickly doing this is to just note that this is gravelly loam foothills in a blue oak community. And so the 240 number here, I'm going to remember. And I also put in the chat a link to a PDF. And so this is all the ESD descriptions for the US, the Caribbean, and a few other places. And so we just have to look for 240. Nope, never mind. Okay, I can't use this, never mind. Let me try something. So you guys probably know this, but if you need to find something in a document, just go Control F and type it in. There we go. So blue oak areas. Oh yeah, this is great. So this will give you like a lot of description in that area. And so it gives you the geology, the soils, the physiography, I can't pronounce that. And then the climate, water, that type of stuff. So this can help inform all that whole entire section of the grazing management plan for you guys. Okay, so that is the two databases, Web Soil Survey and the EDIT database. And so we are about out of time, and you guys have been really patient. Thank you for hanging in there. I'm going to have you guys just kind of play with this stuff on your own and start gathering this information. But this isn't going to be a part of that spot check on Friday. This will probably be a spot check in 2 weeks or so. So I'll make a note of it and keep reminding you. And so in the meantime, I think I'm still recording. I will get this lab session uploaded. It'll probably be tomorrow. It takes a long time to upload and get edited and stuff. And so you guys will have this lab as a recorded resource as well. And so if you guys want to right now, I would go ahead and over in the chat towards the bottom, I would click Save Chat. That way you have a copy of it. And you've got a copy of the web links and, you know, some of the prompting stuff for the short and long-term goals as well. Okay, So that was a lot. Sorry, not sorry. What questions do you have?
How do we save the chat again?
So down towards the bottom of,
Oh, I see it now.
yeah, there should be like a ... button.
Yeah, I found it.
Okay, good.
So when you save that, where does it go?
Should go to your hard drive, I'm assuming. So if you look on your File Explorer, either on a Mac or a PC, do you see a Zoom folder anywhere?
Yeah, so as soon as you push save in the chat, it takes me to, because I'm on an HP, it takes me to my little area where all my documents are, and it says meeting saved chat. That's the file name.
There you go. Cool. I would just go in and rename that for today's date in class, and maybe make a note of WebSoil WSS and EDIT. You guys are going to be technology experts and be ready to go right into range management positions. I'm telling you, I've never taught this much technology in this class before. But it's cool stuff. I hope you guys are finding it fun. I mess with this stuff when we go out and are trying to find leases and all that too. And there's some really good apps out there. I don't know, Taylor, does Onyx do this too? It shows you the property owners.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you know like who to ask for permission to go on their land to hunt, or who not to ask for permission. And so
Yeah.
there's a couple other apps that show property owners as well, because all that's registered with the county. So it's not like it's proprietary information. And if you do have proprietary information, you better make some shell corporations and cover it up. But I'm not giving you any ideas at all. So when we're trying to find new leases and we're like driving around and we're like, man, that place hasn't been grazed in a long time. I wonder if anybody would be interested in leasing it. There's apps that I go to do that. So also don't outcompete me on ground for cattle leases and stuff. So we're having a hard enough time finding it right now. Cool. Okay. So I'll hang out for a few more minutes. That's what we had today, as long as you guys are clear on what is due on Friday, and at least have I probably overwhelmed you if you were watching me just jump around and stuff, but you at least have the websites for Web Soil Survey and Edit, and so you can come back when your brain is a little bit fresher and play with those if you would like. So.
And how many paragraphs or sentences do you want us to have in this and for our objectives?
Oh, so for objectives, I would go, probably long-term goals is, a 1 paragraph type situation. Short-term goals, which are more actionable and there's more things to do, that could be 1 to 2. So I think it's just more important that you guys have the right stuff in there. And that's what we talked about today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, well, I'll hang out, but if you need to jump off, please feel free to do so. Range meeting and YCA at 6 p.m. tonight.
Hi, Casey.
Thanks, Casey.
Bye, have a good night.
Casey, that email you sent me and Haley about the composting,
Yeah.
did you want us to get back to you about that by Friday, or just like before you guys have that inspection?
If you have time, that'd be awesome. But if you need to take over the weekend, I can look at it on Monday too.
Okay, awesome. I'll probably be looking at it over the weekend. I'm a little behind on some assignments already, so.
Yeah, don't sacrifice research for assignments right now, okay? Unless your assignment is a research one.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, thanks, Myra.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you made that note to Alyssa about the whole logging in hours and stuff. I mean, I've been keeping track of stuff I've done
She needed me
at
to
the
do
farm.
something else. She emailed me, so I'm writing you on a post-it note, and my post-it note things get done because they go right on my computer, so I have to look at them. So they're
Okay,
on
cool.
there. I'll take care of it tonight or tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.